A federal judge in New York City issued a ruling earlier this week in one of the most important decisions, really, of the digital age. The plaintiff is Matt Haas, a little-known creator of YouTube videos featuring a fictional character named Bold Guy who hits on women. We're not going to judge anybody's content here, right? We're just going to tell you what it's about.
I love Bold Guy, but go on.
The defendants are Ethan and Ela Klein, who are also creators of YouTube videos, but unlike Mr. Haas, they are enormously successful with 750 million YouTube views. They have almost 5 million subscribers. And the Klein's videos are typically what are called commentary videos. And what they do is they poke fun, sometimes harshly criticize other people's content on YouTube. They'll run, like they did in this case, Matt Haas's video, and they'll talk about it. They'll break up the video with their commentary on what Matt Haas has done. This is a common aspect of the YouTube universe. A lot of people create these commentary videos based on, where they're commentating not just on other people's YouTube videos per se, but also on movies and music and television and other sorts of copyrighted works. It often upsets the copyright holder, right? In this case, Matt Haas, who was very upset about what they had said about his production, and he sued them. Not for the things they had said, but the way in which they structured their own video, right? Basically, what Matt Haas says is, you ran my video within your video commentary, and therefore you breached my copyright. This is a really important case within the digital universe. Again, so many different people do this kind of commentating, and the judge was asked to consider whether or not they had in fact violated his copyright, or if it fell within a very common exception called the fair use exception. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But lucky for all of you YouTubers out there, the judge rejected Mr. Haas's lawsuit, finding that the client's actions were protected by the fair use doctrine, which is an exception to typical laws of copyright. Now, today's episode, we're going to tell you what fair use is, how it applied in this case, and maybe try and give you guys a little bit of a roadmap if you're going to create YouTube videos or other type of videos, how you can get away with it, or what pitfalls there are out there for you. I'm Jason Beckerman.
And I'm Derek Kaufman.
And this is Behind the Bar. Derek, why is this decision so important, and what lessons can content creators on YouTube and elsewhere take from the judge's ruling?
Yeah, look, it's difficult to overstate the importance of this decision. YouTube, in large part, is based on these types of commentary videos. People go out there, they scour, they curate the content out there, the creative, original content, and then they make fun of it. It's a lot of snark in the YouTube universe, and that's why Ela and Ethan are so popular. So now what this means is you don't have to get permission from the copyright user when you're doing these commentary and critiques. So the judge sort of laid out a roadmap of the way for future YouTubers to get away with this, basically. Right. And the roadmap is as such. First, you want to take as little as possible to tell your point, although the judge didn't really focus so much on the amount because they took 60% of Bold Guy's content, which always seemed kind of high to me, but the judge doesn't focus too much on this. They say, look, as long as you're using a portion and you use it the right way, I'm not going to look at the percentages, and there's no specific number.
She almost looked at, the judge did, the gratuitous nature of the use. As long as it wasn't gratuitous, as long as you weren't trying to usurp the other person's content for your own entertainment value, but instead you were keeping it to the commentary itself, that seemed to be okay.
That's right. And the judge really focused on how they used it. So in Ethan and Ela's videos, they intersperse short snippets of what Bold Guy's video looks like, and then they make fun of it. And then they go back to the video for maybe 20 more seconds, and then they make fun of it. And its entirety, I think it's a 15-minute piece where they use 3 minutes of his content, or 3 minutes and 24 seconds, but they cut it up a lot.
And that
so
really
you're watching a different type of video than his video.
And this leads to another very important point the judge focused on, which is you could never look at the Bold Guy video that's contained within the Klein's video and use that as a substitution for the Bold Guy's video itself. So in other words, you couldn't just say, hey, I've seen the Klein video, so I've seen these interspersed little bits of the Bold Guy video, and therefore I don't need to watch the Bold Guy video. The judge says, no, if you were to go and watch the Bold Guy video, you would get an entirely different experience than you did while watching the Klein's video, an entirely different experience in terms of what Bold Guy said. So therefore, there's still a market that exists for the Bold Guy's video. You haven't taken away the monetary value of the Bold Guy video, of Matt Haas's video, by doing what you did, Klein.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the focus is on really how they use it, because you can imagine a commentary video. I love the movie Rocky, and I have some scenes that I really love. You can imagine me doing a video where I say, hey guys, This is my favorite scene from Rocky 2. Check it out, but hang on for the end, because then I'm going to critique this video and why it was so special. During that entire section, you could not watch the end of my video, and you could just watch that, and then you've effectively stolen the copyright of that video.
I could go to your video and watch it in a replacement for the copyright holder's airing of the
video. It'd be easy to jump around. Right. With Ethan and Hila's video, you would have to stitch together a whole thing. It'd be virtually impossible, and the judge really took that into consideration.
Two warnings. Number one, this case will almost certainly be appealed. There's a lot of people with a very significant vested monetary interest in the outcome of this case. It will almost certainly be appealed. This is a judge from the Southern District of New York City, and Manhattan, probably with the possible exception of the Central District of California and Los Angeles, the most important federal judge in federal district in the country. That's number one. Number two, there are limitations that the judge suggests are on this type of commentary. You said one, where the entire video is played out, where it can be a replacement for the actual underlying work. And number two, where the commentary is not really commentary at all, but just is used as an excuse to show the underlying video. And the judge warns potential YouTube creators against that kind of usurpation of the underlying video.
Yeah, I like to think of it as don't use the video just for its entertainment value itself. You have to be saying something about it. And I think the critique, while it's a mushy type word, you know critique when you see it. I mean, this is one of those doctrines, fair use is an equitable doctrine. Judges balance these factors in different ways. This judge balanced it this way. I think it's defensible, but I also think you need to be a little bit nervous if you're a content creator in another way on YouTube, that your content is now exposed. So while this is largely YouTubers rejoicing, I think other people who are creating original videos like Bold Guy are maybe not so happy with this type of result.
So I think you're right. Of course, the most famous fair use case in the history of the law involved Luther Campbell, right? Two Live Crew.
Absolutely.
They released a song called Pretty Woman, which was a parody of Roy Orbison's famous song, Oh Pretty Woman, the one from the movie Pretty Woman. Everybody knows it.
Yep.
Take a listen to the difference between the two songs. So the court there ruled that this was good old-fashioned parody, just one person making fun of or trading off of another person's song, making fun of that song. And in the same way that this court authorized the allowance of fair use, the allowance of commentary, Luther Campbell was allowed to parody Roy Orbison's famous song.
Yeah, I mean, the case is it's all under the umbrella of fair use, but unlike the Bold Guy case where they're doing critique or commentary, parody is a species of fair use that Weird Al has depended on for decades. I mean, without this, we wouldn't have Fad and Eat It and Amish Paradise. And I think the world would be a poorer place without him.
And remember the movie The People versus Larry Flint. Absolutely. It was all about a case that went to the Supreme Court where the court said, look, making fun of people, and commentary is another way of making fun of people, and certainly in this case, they're making fun of the Bold Guy's videos. Yep. Making fun of people is completely protected by the First Amendment. You cannot pass laws that restrict the ability of one person to pull up another person's content and make fun of it, or poke holes in it, or ridicule it, or comment on it in any other way. That is really at the essence of the First Amendment.
Yeah, and parody is a special example because you have to use the person's copyrighted work to parody it. The whole point of parody is that you're cueing in the audience that here's this famous copyrighted work, and I'm lampooning it. You can't lampoon something unless you're using a little bit, and the court recognizes that, even though you could say that this august body of justices probably weren't that fond of Two Live Crew, but really this is the result that was dictated here.
Right.
And they probably more fans of Roy Orbison.
And for the same reason, the Kleins, what they were doing is protected content, and that's what the judge found, right? It's essential for the Kleins' ability to comment on, make fun of, poke holes in, that they be able to use enough of the underlying video in order to tell their story, tell their commentary. But as we talked about, there are points you go too far. I mean, do you want to talk through sort of the 4 points that the courts always look to? I know this gets a little dry, but I think it's kind of fascinating, especially for YouTube creators out there.
That's right. So any fair use case, when you raise that defense, what the court does is apply a 4-factor balancing test. No one of these factors is ultimately determinative. They're just looking at them to see, how should we think about this case? Let's weigh lay things out. It's really an equitable test that they're applying. So the first factor is the purpose of the use. Why are you using it? Are you using it for commercial exploitation? Are you using it for educational purposes? And the court wants to know, are you really just trying to cash in on the copyright owners, or are you trying to do something different where you're informing or critiquing? And that's really the critical analysis.
That is a critical analysis. Yep. And you're right, no one factor is determinative, but this is the factor that people look at most. And we as a news media organization here at TMZ, we rely on the fair use exception to copyright law quite a bit, because telling the news, even though we're a for-profit enterprise, nevertheless, when you speak about the news, when you turn things into, when you transform underlying copyrighted content into a story about news, you are allowed to use some of that copyrighted content in order to tell the news story. So a classic example might be, you know, during the Mayweather-McGregor fight that's going to happen, you know, in the next couple of days, you know, if somebody in the audience were to get into a fist fight, you're not focused on the fight, but you could tell the news story about what happened in the audience and potentially use some of the Showtime's content in order to tell that news story. You're not just doing a highlight video of the fight, because that's not where the news angle is. Right. It's more about what's happening that's outside of the four corners of the copyrighted work.
Right, and you use the big word that you'll see in all these cases, transformative. Are you telling something different so that they can't just substitute it, but you're not just providing a substitute for the copyrighted content? Right. I've seen going around the Mayweather fight you brought up, a lot of people are doing memes from Rocky. I'm a big Rocky fan. They're putting Conor McGregor's face over Rocky training and Mayweather's face over Apollo Creed. These seem like fair use as well.
Transforming the use of the Rocky, of the underlying Rocky copyright.
You're telling another underdog story. You're not just trying to play a Rocky clip for no purpose. All right. So the second factor is not that important of a factor, but is one that they always bring up and they always point out is not that big of a factor, but it's called the nature of the copyrighted work. Is this fiction or nonfiction? Some people say, is it published or non-published? It's not really a factor that becomes determinative all that often. Fictional works are given a little bit more privilege because there's more of a creative output when you're creating a work of fiction, like Bold Guy made a movie. He sat there. Right. You want to make sure that the artists are protected in a certain extent, but again, that factor rarely comes into play.
Yeah, your Rocky example is a good one. Obviously a fictional tale, but nevertheless you can use it for purposes of telling another story.
That's right. That's right. And the third is the amount used. Now, this is where people fall into a lot of traps, because it's the amount of the copyrighted work that is used in relation to the whole. And one of the things the court is looking for is you can't provide a substitute and use all of it, but you also can't take the heart of the work. And sometimes you'll hear in this part of the analysis that even though you used a tiny portion of the video, you actually took the whole point of the video, and they don't like that in fair use.
The Zapruder film, the famous Zapruder film of the Kennedy assassination, is a classic bit, right? That's let's call it a 7-minute long video that Abraham Zapruder took that day.
Yeah, just a motorcade. And,
right.
Yeah,
only about 7 seconds of it are relevant at all. So you can't just say, well, I'm only using 7 seconds of 4.5 minutes, therefore it's fair use. No, you're taking the essence, the heart of the video, the only part that anybody gives a damn about.
We all want to know back and to the left. But that's the only part that people care about.
But if you were doing a news story about the way people dressed in Dallas in 1940 and 1963, you could do, a wide shot and probably take a frame or two from the Zapruder film and say, look, it's not the heart of the film. No, but this is not the monetizable portion of it. So therefore, I'm just showing how people are dressed. And this is a perfect good example of how that looked.
That's right. Now, we don't recommend using the Zapruder film because that is one of the most litigated pieces of footage in history, and they're very, very protective of it. But I think that'd be a good argument, actually, if you're doing a different on the style of the 60s.
So
I like that.
Just on that, most litigated pieces of work, you got the Zapruder film, you got the Hindenburg video, which was forever well protected, right?
Yes.
Reginald Denny being beat up.
I was just about to say.
During the Los Angeles riots, a ton of litigation about that.
Yeah, Zoe Tur, that's the helicopter video, and she's very, very protective.
Well, we can talk about this for anyway. And going to number 4.
We'll give you number 4. So number 4 is also hugely important. It's the effect on the market for the copyrighted work, and this goes to the core.
By the way,
is it a
substitute?
What they
all mean. This is what transformative use means. How much of the video you're using? It all comes to this factor: are you diminishing the value of the underlying copyrighted
That's
work?
right, and this is why it matters most. Because if you're depriving the copyright owner of the revenue stream that they can get from their work that they authored, you really are going to deter people from doing creative works in the first place. So the courts focus on this a lot, and they focus on this substitute issue, right?
Right. Going back to the Zapruder film again, the silly example that I gave about Dallas in the 1963, what people dressed like, because there are obviously much better examples to use than the Zapruder film to prove that point. But nevertheless, it's important because if there's a value, and there certainly is to the Zapruder film, if every time a news organization wants to use it, they have to pay $10,000, by just taking apart where you see the way people dress, you're not diminishing the value of that at all. But if you do take the heart, the core of the video, you are depriving them of the market value for it. And that's really what the courts are looking at. And all of these various factors I think, drill down on that one point.
I think that's right. So if we were to distill it all down to a core point, I sort of think of it as, if you want to benefit from the defense of fair use, I say make it short and critical. That's to me the headline here is
not critical as important, critical as criticizing.
Exactly,
right?
criticize. So use as little as possible to tell your story. And we encounter this all the time because we're making creative pieces. We're invoking the fair use doctrine in our analysis constantly. And the way Jason and I usually think of it is just use the portion that you need to tell your story. If you're using just that portion, you should have a pretty good
typically
defense.
Okay, except in extreme circumstances.
That's right.
What's that sound?
Well, that sounds like mail time. Parker, lay it on us.
It is mail time. Remember to write in your questions and comments to behindthebar@tmz.com. First one up is from Callum. I'm seeing a lot of articles about how unevenly distributed the betting is on the Mayweather vs. McGregor fight. So much so towards McGregor that some bookies are saying that if McGregor wins, it could be their greatest single loss. How much are bookies required to pay out if they can't sustain themselves after an upset like this?
Well, you know, there's a contractual relationship anytime you enter into a bet with. We're going to talk lawful bookmakers. We're not going to talk about, you know, mom and pop shops.
Not the guys who break your thumbs.
Right. Because obviously that's a law unto itself. But if it's a legal bookmaking outfit, and let's put aside the idea of a large casino because they can pay whatever debts they have, but a smaller casino which exists and bookmakers which exist. They're contractually obligated. When you place a bet, you get a little ticket, and that's a contract, and they're required to pay out 100% of it. If for whatever reason they can't pay out 100%, I guess, Derek, and this is right up your alley, right? I guess they would invoke bankruptcy laws like any other business that can't pay its debts.
Yeah, that's right. So casinos file bankruptcy all the time. It's a very, very common occurrence, and these contractual obligations go to the back of the line. To be perfectly honest with you, there are some preferred creditors and people who have betting slips may get into a preferred unsecured class where they don't have any collateral, but they generally do take a haircut in a bankruptcy case because the big creditors who get paid are the ones who have liens on the property. So when a casino goes bankrupt, you've got banks that are owed money because of the construction.
These are called secured debtors, right? People have a security interest. Secured creditors, sorry. Yep. Have a security interest in the property or in the receipts of the like the tax man, right?
That's
right. The IRS or the state government of Nevada would have first dibs on the receipts, right? The cash.
That's right. Because what they do is they attach a lien to it, and that's their collateral. And you can foreclose on your collateral, take it to a sale, and sell that asset under state law. And when you go into bankruptcy, in order for bankruptcy to work properly, they have to respect what can happen under state law. So secured creditors are at the front of the line. All of their assets, and to the extension the cash collateral is what it's called, they will attach their liens to the cash as well. And the betting people are holding the bag.
So let's say I go to MGM and I pay $25 on Floyd Mayweather to win. It's going to pay me $8, right? I win that bet. All right. They declare bankruptcy. How much of my $8 am I going to get?
It will depend on how much money the entire casino is worth. You may get nothing. Maybe $1.50. You'd be lucky. We call it pennies on the dollar. If you get a 15% distribution, or let's say you were going to win $10 and you only get $1.50, that'd be a 15% distribution. That's high in bankruptcy.
Well, cases. But I've also they also owe me my bet back, right? My $25 bet back. So it's a $33 debt they owe me under my hypothetical.
That's exactly right, and that's a good point. So the money that you put in, you may not win the amount that you're entitled to win on top of your bet, but the money that you put in would not be subject to the liens of the bank. So you'd at least get your cash back.
There we go. All right. Little wrinkle on top of that.
But
yeah, so obviously they need to pay it back. But I think it's very unlikely. Even the amount of money that I've been seeing thrown around on this fight, it's in the tens of millions of dollars. It's a lot of money. But it's spread around a lot of casinos, and most of those casinos are obviously backed by multi-billion. This is not the kind of thing that's going to bankrupt a casino. What bankrupts a casino are, typically servicing a multi-billion-dollar construction project. Right. It's not gambling losses that bankrupt casinos. It's the inability to pay the various elements of overhead that come with any hotel operation.
That's right, because when they go down, if you don't pay the bettors, that's the worst thing that can happen to a casino. If you don't pay your banks their full dollars, you can typically start a new casino later, but if you don't pay gamblers, it would be the worst press you could have.
Yeah,
so they try to get them paid.
I turn in my little black chips at the casino cage, and in exchange I get a bag of chips or something like that.
It's all a confidence game, and they would never lose. They would never sell out their customers like that.
All right, next one up is from Lisa. I was pretty disgusted at the video you guys posted showing Tommy Lee and his girlfriend leaving an airplane bathroom one after another. I have been waiting for the follow-up article on how they were arrested, but haven't seen a peep. Is nothing going to happen to them?
It turns out that nothing's going to happen to them. So
well, first of all, we don't know anything happened, right?
We don't know anything happened in the bathroom, but you got Tommy Lee, the rock star of rock stars. Exiting the bathroom, his girlfriend exiting with a smile creeping across her face.
And no
15
shirt
seconds
on.
later. And virtually no shirt.
She was wearing a bra and a cardigan.
I don't understand the gravity of it. Yeah, it's just sort of these. What was holding it up?
I don't know this for sure, but I think that there was a medical solution to the gravity problem.
You figured that part out.
Yeah.
But so I did some digging to see whether there was an FAA guideline that was maybe breached, and there wasn't. And actually, there are some airlines that make cheeky references to the Mile High Club. Richard Branson, famously, when he started Virgin, said, "We're not the type of airline to bug a couple that's in the bathroom." So,
well, hold on though. Banging in a public bathroom is unlawful. Right?
It is not. It is not. It's unlawful if there's an indecent exposure element to it. But if they're
You're telling
both
me
in a
if
private
they're
setting,
I don't believe you.
People, they haven't been prosecuted.
I challenge you on that. I feel like
You
we're playing
can't-
Scrabble. It is not lawful to go into a restroom of public accommodation and just bang out. That can't be.
I don't think it's legal. Legal would be the wrong term, but they turn a blind eye to it.
No,
I couldn't find
I
a
agree.
single
That I agree.
prosecution
That I
or
agree.
a single piece of precedent. But you probably shouldn't do it. But what is more frowned upon is masturbating in your seat.
Oh my God.
just so we're all clear, you're not allowed to do that. And I did look that up.
And by
Coming
looking
out of
up, he
left field there.
bailed
Look
himself
it up.
out after a long stint in the pokey.
That was a hell of a flight.
Oh, this led perfectly into the third one from Blaze. I know this is a weird question, but have you ever regretted anything you've ever said on air? If so, what was it?
It was the time I admitted to masturbating on a plane, probably. Just now. No.
What about in your first week here when you talked about your wife's wiping habits?
That's probably one take back I'd prefer.
Right.
when I commented on Mary's butthole not being pristine.
Yeah,
she didn't take kindly to that.
Yeah, I once said that I regretted having my children. My wife didn't enjoy
That
it.
was a rough one for
That
you.
was a rough one.
Yeah.
I didn't mean it the way it came out.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I regretted, the impact on my life, not having them.
I think when I outed my uncle as a rapist was also another rough time for my family.
Your uncle was outed by the federal authorities
true.
as a rapist.
It was public record, but it was not my brightest moment.
This podcast
Yeah.
also ranks up there.
Thanks for bringing it up, everyone, so I can relive all of those terrible moments.
All right, we are out of here on that fancy note. We will be back again next week with another exciting episode of Behind the Bar. Thanks,
Yep, see you
everybody. Bye. Thanks for watching. If you want more nerdy deep dives into the legal side of celebrity news, hit our subscribe button right here.
And check out our previous episode over here.